Welcome to a quiet journey through time. Tonight, we travel back more than 2,000 years to witness the slow, inevitable fall of one of history's greatest empires, the Achaemenid Empire. Let that name wash over you. Achaemenid, a dynasty that once stretched across the known world. Close your eyes, if you wish, and let yourself drift as we walk together through the twilight of an ancient power. Part 1. The Empire at its height. Picture, if you can, a vast expanse of land stretching from the shores of the Aegean Sea all the way to the distant Indus River, from the golden pyramids of Egypt to the endless steppes of Central Asia. This was the Achaemenid Empire, the largest the world had ever seen. So vast, so impossibly vast, that a single ruler could barely hold it all together. Imagine the great kings of old, Cyrus, Darius, names that echoed across continents. They had built this empire through conquest, through vision, through the steady accumulation of power. But empires, like all living things, reach a limit. Geographic barriers rose up, the stubborn Greeks to the west, the untamed steppes to the north, the rebellious lands of Egypt to the south. Expansion slowed, then stopped. And when the wars of conquest ended, so too did the flow of wealth that had fed the empire's great machinery. No more easy victories. No more treasure caravans streaming back to the heartland. The empire had grown too large, too complex, and the world was about to notice. Part 2. Cracks in the foundation. The empire was administered through satraps, provincial governors, scattered across its enormous territories. These satraps ruled like kings in their own right, with their own armies, their own treasuries, their own ambitions. Over generations, they became more independent, more powerful, less loyal to the distant throne. The great king sat in his palace, but his reach grew shorter with each passing year. Messages took weeks, sometimes months to travel, from the furthest provinces to the royal court. By the time a problem was reported, it had often grown beyond control. The empire's size, once its greatest strength, had become its heaviest burden. Taxes flowed unevenly. Corruption spread like slow poison through the veins of administration. Tax farmers squeezed the common people. Officials took their share, and resentment built in silence across the provinces. The system was straining, creaking like an old tree in a gathering storm. And in the heart of power, in the palace itself, something darker was stirring. Court politics had always been dangerous, but now they turned deadly. Assassinations, poisonings brother against brother, courtier against king. In the year 465 BCE, Xerxes I was murdered, struck down by conspiracy in his own palace. The throne became a prize to be seized, not a sacred inheritance. Artaxerxes I had to kill the assassin Artabanus to claim his crown, setting a terrible precedent. Loyalty could no longer be assumed even at the highest levels. Trust evaporated like morning dew. Later kings faced even worse. Artaxerxes II, Artaxerxes III. Their reigns marked by endless plots and purges. Queens schemed, princes rebelled. Courtiers wielded knives in the shadows. And then came Bagoas, the powerful courtier, the kingmaker and king-killer. He murdered Artaxerxes III, then murdered his son Arses, trying to control the throne like a puppet master. But when Darius III took power, he forced Bagoas to drink his own poison. Even this victory could not restore what had been lost: the mystique of monarchy, the unquestioned authority of the great king. The throne room had become a place of fear, not reverence. Part 3. Rebellion and Fragmentation. While the court descended into violence, the provinces began to slip away. Izama, Egypt, that ancient land of pharaohs, revolted again and again. Each time, the empire had to pour vast resources into reconquest, draining the treasury, exhausting the armies. Egypt would submit, then rebel again, a cycle that never truly ended. In the 4th century BCE came the revolt of the satraps, when several Western governors rose up together. Not isolated incidents anymore, but coordinated defiance. The satraps had seen the weakness at the center, and they tested it. Even members of the royal family turned against the throne. Cyrus, the younger brother of Artaxerxes II, gathered a massive army, hired Greek mercenaries, and marched against his own brother. They met at Cunaxa in 401 BCE, where Cyrus died in battle, but the message was clear. No one was safe, not even from their own blood. Artaxerxes III eventually crushed rebellions in Egypt, Phoenicia, and Cyprus. But at what cost? The city of Sidon was destroyed brutally, a message written in ash and rubble. But such violence only bred more resentment, more quiet hatred, more secret plans. Local elites who had once supported Persian rule now looked elsewhere for protection. Some satraps began cooperating with Greek city-states, even with the rising power of Macedonia when it suited their interests. The great king was no longer an unquestioned sovereign, but merely one player among many. The empire's borders still existed on maps, but its unity was an illusion, a dream slowly fading. Part 4. The Military Shadow. The empire's military reputation, once fearsome, had been tarnished decades before. In Greece, at Marathon, at Salamis, at Plataea, Persian armies had been defeated. The empire survived those losses, but something intangible was lost: the aura of invincibility. Greek warriors had stood against the Persian tide and held. And Greeks never forgot. Stories spread throughout the Hellenic world. Tales that portrayed Persia as wealthy, yes, but soft, decadent, vulnerable. The empire had failed to conquer mainland Greece, failed to subdue the northern steppes. Its limits had been exposed, and so the empire increasingly relied on Greek mercenaries, paying foreigners to fill its ranks with quality infantry. This created a strange irony. The empire's strength could be bought away by rivals who offered more gold. The very soldiers who defended the great king one year might fight for his enemies the next. Money was not enough to hold an empire together. While Persia struggled with internal decay, a new power was rising in the north. Macedon, a kingdom on the edge of the Greek world, was transforming. Under Philip II, Macedon unified the fractious Greek city-states and forged them into a weapon. The Sarissa phalanx with its impossibly long spears, moving in perfect coordination, swift cavalry charges, mobile and devastating, discipline, training, unity of purpose. Everything the Persian military was losing, Macedon was perfecting. Persian gold flowed into Greek politics, trying to prevent Macedonian dominance, but the money only delayed the inevitable. City-states bickered, took the gold, and eventually fell under Philip's control anyway. By the time a new great king took the throne, Darius III, it was already too late. Macedon possessed everything needed to strike, and at its head stood Philip's son, a young man burning with ambition. Alexander. Part 5. The invasion begins in the spring of 334 BCE. Alexander crossed the Hellespont. 40,000 men. A small force by Persian standards, but superbly trained, unified, hungry for glory. The western satraps assembled an army to meet him at the Granicus River. Imagine that river, flowing cold and swift, the two armies facing each other across the water. The battle was swift, brutal, decisive. The Macedonians crashed through the Persian lines, their cavalry overwhelming the defenders. The satrap's army shattered, fled, dissolved. Asia Minor lay open, city after city surrendered. Sardis, the Ionian Greek cities, key bases, sources of revenue, all slipping from Persian control. Barely any time had passed, and the empire's western defenses had collapsed. Darius III, the great king, finally took the field himself. At Issus in 333 BCE, the armies met again. This time, the great king himself commanded, surrounded by his household troops, his royal guard. But when the battle turned, when the Macedonian wedge drove deep into the Persian center, Darius fled. He abandoned the field, left behind his mother, his wife, his children, all captured by Alexander. The great king had run. That image spread like wildfire across the empire. The supreme ruler fleeing in panic, his family in enemy hands. Prestige, legitimacy, authority, all depend on perception. And Darius had been seen to run. Alexander did not pursue him immediately, not yet. Instead, he turned south, methodically capturing the coastal cities. The siege of Tyre, lasting months, brutal and determined. Gaza falling after fierce resistance. Each city Alexander took cut Persian naval power, isolated the empire from the sea. And then Egypt, ancient Egypt, land of the pharaohs, offered almost no resistance. The Egyptians accepted Alexander, crowned him pharaoh, embraced him as liberator. In 332 BCE, one of the empire's richest satrapies simply walked away. Darius could only watch from a distance as piece after piece fell. Feel the quiet tragedy of it, the inevitability, like watching a sunset. Part 6. The final confrontation. Darius knew he had to face Alexander again. He gathered everything he had. Every soldier, every horseman, every chariot. At Gaugamela in 331 BCE, on a vast plain he had carefully prepared, Darius assembled his last great army. Cavalry from across the empire, infantry formations, even scythe chariots, war machines meant to tear through enemy lines. The Persian force was enormous, perhaps outnumbering Alexander's army many times over. But numbers were not enough. Alexander was a master of maneuver, of timing, of exploiting the smallest weakness. He drew part of the Persian line away from the prepared ground, creating gaps, chaos, opportunity. Then came the decisive moment, Alexander's cavalry charge. Straight at the gap in the center, supported by the unstoppable phalanx, the Persian line broke, and Darius once again fled the field. This time there was no recovering from it. Satraps and nobles, who had witnessed their king's flight twice, concluded the obvious. The great king could not protect them, could not protect the empire. One by one, they submitted to Alexander. Mazaeus, satrap of Babylon, surrendered that ancient city without a fight. Susa opened its gates. The empire was not so much conquered as it dissolved, melting away from within. In late 331 and early 330 BCE, Alexander reached Persepolis. Persepolis, the ceremonial heart of the empire, where kings were crowned, where tribute was received. Its treasuries held wealth accumulated over centuries, gold and silver beyond counting. All of it fell into Alexander's hands, and then parts of the palace burned. Whether by accident or design, the flames consumed chambers and halls, reducing grandeur to ash. Later, it would be said this was revenge for Xerxes burning Athens, but in the moment, it was simply the end. The physical heart of the Achaemenid dynasty, gone. From Persepolis, Alexander traveled to Pasargadae, to the tomb of Cyrus the Great. He protected the tomb, honored it, signaling that he wanted to be seen, not as a destroyer, but as heir to the legitimate Persian tradition. But the dynasty itself, the line of Achaemenid kings, was already over. Part 7. The last king. Darius III fled east after Gaugamela, trying to regroup, trying to find loyal forces. But his authority was shattered. The satrap Bessus, who governed Bactria in the far northeast, saw opportunity. As they retreated, Bessus and other conspirators made their decision. They murdered Darius, the last Achaemenid great king, while he fled toward Central Asia. Bessus briefly claimed the royal title and tried to present himself as the legitimate successor. But almost no one accepted him. He was a regicide, a traitor, and not a rightful king. Alexander used Darius's murder to his advantage, presenting himself as the avenger of the fallen king. He pursued Bessus, captured him, and executed him as a traitor to his own sovereign. A convenient narrative, the Macedonian conqueror as defender of Persian legitimacy. With Darius dead and Bessus destroyed, there was no Achaemenid claimant left. No rallying point for empire-wide resistance. Some regions fought on locally. Central Asia resisted for years, but there was no coordinated imperial response. The dynasty had ended not with a grand final battle, but with betrayal on a dusty road. The empire that had stretched across the world was reduced to a dead king in the wilderness. Part 8. Aftermath and Legacy. Alexander did not destroy the Achaemenid system. He absorbed it. He kept many Persian satraps in place, retained officials, and used the administrative framework that had governed the empire for 2 centuries. The system worked even after its creators were gone. When Alexander died, his empire was divided among his generals. The Seleucid kingdom in the east, the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt. Both carried forward Persian institutions wrapped in Greek clothing. The fusion of cultures, Greek and Persian, Hellenic and Near Eastern, created something new. Art, religion, administration, all blended in the kingdoms that followed. But the memory of Achaemenid power remained. Centuries later, the Parthians rose, and they consciously adopted Achaemenid symbols and imagery. Later still, the Sasanians claimed descent from the ancient line and used Achaemenid iconography to legitimize their rule. The dynasty died, but its shadow stretched across centuries. Historians looking back see the pattern clearly. Internal vulnerabilities, court intrigue, assassination, rebellious satraps, economic strain. All of it was there, weakening the structure from within. And then came an external force, unusually capable, perfectly timed. Alexander's genius was not just military. It was in recognizing the fractures and striking at exactly the right moment. In roughly 4 years, an empire that had lasted 2 centuries, that had ruled millions, that had stretched across continents, fell. It remains one of history's clearest examples of how a large but fragile empire can be overthrown by a smaller, more unified force. Size is not strength if the bonds holding it together have rotted away. The Achaemenid Empire teaches us about the limits of power, the danger of internal division, the importance of legitimacy. Let these lessons drift away like smoke. What remains is the quiet tragedy, the slow collapse, the inevitable fall. Great empires rise, shine brilliantly for a time, and then fade. Nothing lasts forever. The palaces crumble. The kings are forgotten. The glory becomes dust. But the stories remain, whispered across millennia, told on quiet nights, to help us understand, and perhaps to help us sleep. The Achaemenid Empire is gone, dissolved into history, into memory, into dreams. And so, let us leave it there, in the peaceful past, as you drift toward your own quiet rest. The empires of old have fallen, their struggles ended, their stories told, and now it is time for you to rest. Sleep well, and let history carry you gently into peaceful dreams.